Okay, so there are growing calls for the takeover of Newcastle United to be blocked, and these are coming from human rights organisations and the Qatari government, especially, but also the fiance of the murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was obviously murdered in the embassy in Turkey a couple of years ago, and he was a Saudi dissident journalist. Now, I can understand the calls from the human rights side of things, and I can understand the calls from the fiance of the murdered journalist. The issue I have is this is not the first time Saudi money has been involved in a takeover or a running of a football club in England. Sheffield United has a percentage of its ownership is Saudi owned and has Saudi investment. And these human rights groups and pressure groups haven't batted an eyelid about Sheffield United and their involvement with Saudi money. This is the hypocrisy of it all. And football doesn't care where the money comes from. Doesn't care. So the takeover deal is split between 10% the Man Staveley, 10% the Reuben Brothers, and 80% the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. So the Saudi government has this public investment company whose sole objective is to diversify the Saudi economy through investments, and in this case, sports and tourism is a big part of their portfolio. That's where a lot of the money is going, is sports and tourism. In fact, a lot of Arab states do this. They invest in sports, tourism, banking sectors, and other forms of industry and investment. So Dubai has done it with Man City. They bought multiple football clubs in the Man City group, which I find a bit of a conflict of interest personally, but that's my personal opinion. The Qatari government, PSG and beIN Sports, and it's the Qatari government who are kicking up a fuss about this takeover deal. They're saying that the Saudi government has allowed a TV satellite company to steal TV rights. What I find really interesting is no one complained when the Qatari owners bought PSG, and no one really complained when beIN Sports, owned by the same person, got a very lucrative TV deal for broadcasting rights both in Europe and in the US. No one really looked at that going, that's a conflict of interest. You own a football club and you own a media company as well. We've been here before with Silvio Berlusconi with AC Milan. He owned the biggest media company in Italy, Mediaset. He was also Prime Minister of Italy as well, and has links to the mafia. So we've been here before with a European owner owning a European club and a European media firm. So UEFA and European football have a track record here dating back decades. They don't care where the money comes from. We know some clubs in across Europe are owned by gangsters. You go anywhere in Eastern Europe, a lot of the clubs have organised crime affiliations. Marseille is another club where the French mafia, the French and Corsican mafia, have shares in the club and have a say in who's hired as manager and who's hired as chairman and who's in charge of the fan groups. Yeah. This is where football has a massive problem. It's dug itself such a deep hole where it doesn't care where the money comes from as long as the money comes in. And we've seen this in English football where there are several owners who should never have been close to owning a football club. Cellini and Mike Ashley as well in that grouping. Even possibly Abramovich with his links to Russian organised crime and the Russian state. With Chelsea, there have been question marks over owners for decades. Decades. And it beggars belief that only this club, this takeover deal, where these human rights organisations and these and various pressure groups are raising concerns about, the background of the ownership takeover. We've seen convicted criminals by football clubs in this country. Sullivan Gold at West Ham, when they also owned Birmingham City, have both been to prison for obscenity offences back in the 60s and 70s for selling unlicensed pornography. Cellini, who had a stake in Leeds, tax fraud in Italy over failure to pay tax on property. He spent 18 months fighting criminal charges in Italy, still managed to pass the fit and proper persons test, which raises concerns about the integrity of the system in place. Now, I had a live stream over the weekend and the question was posed that there were rumours that the deal had collapsed. Now, I went on every news website, local and national, in this country, and most of the stories were pointing towards pressure being put upon the FA and the Premier League to, really block the deal from these Amnesty International and other groups, and that the deal was getting very, very close because the paperwork is still being processed by the Premier League and the FA. I'm more inclined to believe that the deal will go through, simply because football's dug this hole where it's already set a precedent for decades where it doesn't care where the money comes from or who owns clubs and who invests in them. We know there's state money from China involved in football. Sheffield United have Saudi investment. There's Qatari money, Dubai, or UAE, United Arab Emirates. I know football. I know basically a whole league worth of clubs around the world. We know there's US money, Canadian, Russian, British, whatever the businessman is, whoever the owner is. There's money from all around the world in football. It's a global sport. But there are state players involved, and they haven't raised questions over the Chinese investment of this, over the Thai investment of that, over this club and that club until now. So the hypocrisy from these pressure groups is such that it aggravates me. They've had years to raise objections about Qatar, stronger objections about PSG, beIN Sports. They've done nothing. They've had years to raise objections about, for example, Abramovich in Chelsea. He has links to the Russian mafia and the Russian state. No objections there. None. You look at when Berlusconi was in charge of AC Milan, UEFA didn't blink an eyelid when basically links to the Italian state and organised crime. Marseille found guilty of match fixing, had titles stripped, links to the Corsican and French mafias. They have a big say in how that club is run. They're part of the ownership group, ironically, down in Marseille. There is an organised crime element with that club. The French FA, don't blink an eyelid. You go to anywhere in Eastern Europe, there are big links with organised crime groups and paramilitary groups from the Yugoslav wars owning clubs up and down Eastern Europe. There's criminal involvement in Greek football, Turkish football, Spanish football. There's some dodgy dealings. German football. There's some dodgy dealings. Football doesn't care where the money comes from. So for all these people saying block the deal, block the deal, block the deal, they have never raised objections about other takeover deals in such a manner before. And that's where I can't stand the rank hypocrisy when they've had opportunity after opportunity to put pressure on football's governing bodies to clean up its act, because football has gone down a dark, dark hole where it doesn't care where the money comes from as long as the money keeps coming in. And it's very hard to undo that path. And what we're seeing now with this shutdown is how reliant football is on dirty money. And the greed of the sport over the last 30 years has damn near killed it. Because players are refusing to take long-term pay cuts. They're only taking it for a short time and they want to get paid. Clubs are trying to force permanent pay cuts on their players long-term so they can make as much money as possible. And when you've got clubs like Barcelona, one of the wealthiest clubs in the world, virtually bankrupt in the space of 6 to 7 weeks of lockdown, it tells you that football has gone seriously, seriously wrong. And we've got clubs on the verge of bankruptcy in every professional league in Europe going, we can go broke. Where has all this money gone? There is a lack of transparency in football, and that includes in takeover bids as well. When there's a takeover bid put on the table, we're only told so much. I think there should be more transparency because football, as I say, doesn't care where this money comes from. But I think we should start caring more about who runs our sports and who runs our clubs and who runs our teams and who pays our players and who takes our money when we the fans, go to games. It doesn't matter what sport it is, because at some point along the line, this has to be cleaned up for the health of the sport. But I think the deal goes through. And I'm glad to see the back of Mike Ashley in football because he's been nothing short of a disaster. And his workplace breaches of health and safety and employment law in this country alone should have blocked him from ever owning that football club. And he's also been involved with giving Rangers money as well. He's a slimy character. But again, the footballing authorities passed him fit as an owner. The FA's fit and proper persons test, he's passed that. And then obviously, I look at Macclesfield Town over the weekend, getting hit with this points deduction. Again, a dodgy owner who doesn't care really about the club, doesn't pay his staff. Players like, we're not getting paid, we refuse to play this game. There is a massive problem with the governance and the gravy train, and it has to stop. And if this crisis can be the reason it stops, that'd be great. But this takeover deal, yeah, there's going to be there's going to be question marks over it for years. There's going to be protests for years by these crocodile tear, hypocrites, because they've not protested outside Man City, they've not protested outside PSG, they're not throwing the toys out the pram outside Sheffield United with their Saudi investment. So the whole situation, it doesn't look good. But I think the deal gets done. Anyway, I thank you very much for watching. It's a bit of a rant, this video, but I'm just getting pissed off with football the way it's run. It's just gone down a dark, greasy slope that I don't think it can climb out of easily. And the pressure groups, well, I can understand Amnesty International and Khashoggi's ex-fiancée, obviously, who's lost her partner. I can understand their pressure out there. But Amnesty International have stayed quiet for years with other club ownership. And Sheffield United, they've got Saudi money. No one's kicking off a fuss about, apart from the legal battle between who owns what at Sheffield United. These pressure groups aren't kicking off about Sheffield United's Saudi money. So there's the hypocrisy there. Newcastle's the bigger name, and it's Mike Ashley's in the news a lot, and they've just latched onto that media attention. And that's wrong. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts below, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.